It's real simple. Chilled soups, take something you like, puree it, season it, soup. It's cucumber. So I got about a half a cucumber here, right in the blender. I got 3 scallions and a clove of garlic. Whoops, I got 2.5 scallions and a clove of garlic. We got mint and parsley, a couple sprigs. You know, you can adjust that as you wish. And yogurt. And I don't particularly like yogurt. This is Stonyfield Farms 2%. At home, I use the Fage. I prefer that, or any of the Greek-style yogurts for the most part. But this does the trick. This is more about kind of evening out the flavor and making it a little smooth and cool, and you get that summer coolness. I did peel the cucumber. You don't have to. In fact, I did peel this because we don't have a strainer here tonight, but generally I strain the soup. This has been strained out, so it's not effective, because the skin can get a little bitter. It can, or if it's too thick or that's a little lemon juice. If it's an older fruit, it'll be tougher. So,
Mike, are you using a regular cucumber or like an English cucumber?
I think the recipe calls for English. I didn't have an English today, so we're just using regular cucumbers. Okay. You can use whatever kind you want. And if you wanted to, you could do the same exact recipe with melon. You could use tomatoes. You name it. Pretty much anything you can think of. So I'm going to give this a blast. So you're going to want to go until it's fairly not this chunky. It's a little more chunky than I'd like. But since we've got it all stirred up and ready to go here, the real trick to this soup is the whipped cream. Because you add the whipped cream and everything gets light and it gets real fluffy. And this works for pretty much any sauce you make. If you make even like a hot dish, you finish it with some whipped cream at the end, you can get a lot of air in there and it'll be really, what's the word I'm looking for? It just kind of floats. And it's really nice. I learned it from a chef who learned it from his chef who's from Austria. And it's a thing they would do there. They'd buzz the soup with a burr mixer and get it nice and airy. So I'm going to give this a little bit more, just for, there we go. Okay, that thing's too loud. Good Lord. No? All right. I would like to point out it's the blue Martha Stewart edition. That would be my wife. So, I'm just going to do it right here in the cup. You get that whipped cream in there. Another quick buzz. Okay. And how could I forget? I almost forgot, and you're about to take off. We're going to garnish with a little scallion oil. This is literally just, now I couldn't find spring onions, so I used scallions, but it's just scallions and a little bit of oil. And it's put through a coffee filter, so it's nice and clean.
What would be the ratio of scallion to the oil on that?
This is about 5 scallions and a cup of oil.
Okay, and you'd always use olive oil in that?
Actually, I don't use olive oil. Whenever I blend things, I don't use olive oil because olive oil gets bitter when you overmix it.
Oh, so what kind of oil are you using?
This is safflower oil. It's very clean. You could use grapeseed. You could use canola, anything that's got no flavor to it, really.
Okay.
Everybody's getting chatty. You want some gloves? Yeah, you're okay for serving. If you'd prefer it, you can. All right, I won't argue with you then. Yeah, this is safflower oil.
Saffron?
Safflower. Also safflower, yeah.
There's a locally made, oh no, that's sunflower.
There is a local sunflower, and sunflower oil would work just fine as well. But you know what? I think olive oil is overpowering, I think, and it can kind of if you overmix it, it gets bitter, and it can be a little more flavor than you need, for this especially. There's a lot of delicate flavors in here. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the soup? I know it's pretty straightforward, but no? Yeah, sure, what's up?
When you say about putting the cream in, like any kind of a sauce,
Yeah. I whip it. For this kind of sauce, or
Your tomato sauce or your
well, not so much that, but more like I used to do a dish of seared scallops with saffron vanilla cream sauce, and I'd finish that with some whipped cream at the very end, so it would be foamy almost on the plate.
We'll do that next.
We'll do that next summer. Yeah, we'll get the scallops out. Okay, we're good. All right, shall I move on? I'm going to move down the road here. Yeah, everyone's going to get a taste. I'm going to start setting up. I got to cut up some fish here. Any more questions about cold soups in general?
what other kinds of cold soups do you make a lot?
Well, gazpacho is kind of the go-to when tomatoes come around and you got so many tomatoes. Of course, vichyssoise, classic potato and leek. But I really don't make a lot of cold. I'll do cold dessert soups sometimes. I'll do like cold melon soup. Yeah, cold borscht. I didn't think of that. That's a good call. And the cold borscht would be good with a little horseradish on that. So the next course, I wanted to do something different. And one of my coworkers suggested poke, which is a Hawaiian Japanese dish. And he said ahi, and everyone does ahi tuna poke. So I was going to do that, and I was doing some research online. And the other big poke is taco poke, which is octopus. And we have seafood centers at all 3 Co-op locations. And I got my octopus from the West Side Co-op, 5 pounds, which is a big one. You don't need that much, but. So I got this octopus, and I tried a new method of cooking it. Instead of, most people boil it for several hours. I steamed it briefly, 5 minutes or less, and then I put it in this kind of pan, cover it with sesame oil and salt and pepper, and just covered it and let it go for 3 hours in a 250 oven. And it came out more tender than I've had octopus before, because it can be a challenge. It gets really tough and really rubbery. So this one came out nice. I chopped it up, and I added it to my ingredients here. I'm going to make another batch with salmon in case anyone's a little skeeved out by octopus, which I understand. I've seen them open in jars on the internet, and I feel kind of bad. But
I walked in for a gigantic walk-in cooler this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it all around, and there in a pan is an octopus.
yes. So we're serving these in these little wonton cups. And I made these about 10 minutes before I walked out the door. It's just a wonton wrapper stuffed in a little muffin pan, maybe 6-8 minutes in the oven. Comes out real nice. Holds whatever you want to put in there. You could probably put soup in it. I wouldn't trust that though. I'm going to work on making another poke here. This is sushi grade salmon, and I got this from the Seafood Center too. And you can tell it's good salmon because of how pale it is. It's high in fat, and there's no skin on it obviously, and they cleaned out the bloodline. That's a nice piece of fish. So I'm just going to cut that up. You want to start serving? Yeah, let's start serving. Okay. So.
You said you can tell how good it is because it's pale.
Yeah, it's really pale, so it's really high in fat. If it's real red, it's got a lot of iron in it.
So like Copper River or king salmon are naturally more red.
That's because of what they eat, and this is a farm salmon too, so it's going to be paler. That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. But that's. Yeah, Copper River's nice. Although, the stocks might be getting low. But this is farm Scottish salmon. This is the sushi grade. It's got nice structure to it. It's real firm, but it's not stringy or anything like that. It's just, this is really low. No, I was going to do a spoon.
Thank you, yes.
That'd be all right? So I'm just going to dice this up. And this would go for tuna too. Or you could use shrimp rather, or calamari, or whatever suits you. Scallops if you're really feeling into that. But traditionally it's made with tuna. We're going to do this. And it's just like butter. This is nice fish.
Good to have a sharp knife. We have our knives sharpened weekly.
Today was the last. We got new knives today. This kind of fish, when it's this nice, it's almost a shame to cook it at all. In fact, I might have a little taste myself there. So, there's the salmon, easy peasy. And so, there's some salmon diced up. We got cucumbers, chopped scallions. Now, traditionally, it's hot red peppers. I didn't have any hot red peppers, so it's red peppers. But I got a little jalapeno. But this is one of those dishes you can kind of put wherever you want in here. You got a lot of anything in your garden, you can jazz it up, throw it in there. But this is kind of traditional. Cilantro, sesame seeds. That's about right. Now, this is a dish that I don't have a recipe for. It's kind of something you do by feel. This is a mixture of tamari and rice wine vinegar. And I'm just going to go kind of light on that. This is one of those dishes, too. You don't want to salt it till you're all done and you've tasted it. A little sesame oil. Because that tamari or that soy sauce, whatever you use, can really impart a lot more salt than you might expect. And the fish itself. Now, there should be lime juice. We're out of lime juice. I got lemon juice. Same thing, though. I mean, in this dish, it works fine. Just a touch.
Regular sesame, toasted sesame.
I used regular. You can use toasted. You can use black. You can use both. Whatever you like. That's one of the nice things about this dish. It's like, you know, salsa. You can put whatever you want in it. It's like salsa. It's like ceviche or tartare. But then you got to put in the wakame seaweed. This is wakame. There's also, you can use nori wrappers if you have that. I'm just going to sprinkle it in. Not too much. It's a little, it can be powerful. But that's easy there. That's that. Going to stir it around. Exactly the same. I did a test batch earlier in the week where I put in, what did I put in there? I put in some water chestnuts. I ended up putting a little sugar as well, but this doesn't need it. The last one, I think I oversalted, so I had to put in the sugar to compensate. Got an extra spoon floating around? Yes. Let's see how I did. Go right ahead.
Is this the only thing going on this particular?
That's correct. That's good. Pardon me.
Wondering, she can't specifically XTZ, so she's wondering if she could just have the salmon in there.
Oh, sure. Here we go.
Well, you know, we will recycle everything, but we just thought this was a little more hygienic, and I'm
Yeah.
looking for little tiny boats, but online, but they don't make those little tiny, like doll-sized
Yeah.
boats, but we will.
We're going to use these boats for the, hang on to them, we're going to use them for the pork too, aren't we, Tony? This is gluten-free. What? Those wonton wrappers?
I don't think so.
Oh, they're not. This is. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to walk around and have you take a look. It's pretty basic. I mean, isn't that pretty? And if anyone wants to try the salmon, I can. You want to try some salmon too? All right. Well, I'll have them dish up some salmon as well. Maybe I'll add some more to this so we can stretch it out a little. So I do have one more piece. Isn't that good? Just going to test that salmon a little bit. It's raw. Yeah, it's sushi grade raw.
Yeah, so this is the.
It is. Well, they can all give everybody some octopus, and I hope everyone tries this. I know octopus is a little weird. It's a little bit of a stretch, but Jamie asked me. She says, "Octopus, really?" And I said, "Octopus. This is food for a large portion of the world, especially people who, it's like peasant food. You can get this from the shore. It's easy to prepare. You can keep it alive. So it's kind of exotic for us, but it's not so much for a good portion of the population. And to cook, it's not hard.
Listen, I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's no octopus being served there. So
None?
this is so much fun.
None?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
There's a lot of whitefish, hey?
Oh yeah, hot whitefish. Whitefish.
Sure.
Yeah, let's start doing some salmon. I'm gonna cut some more salmon up. Let me grab it out of the bin or the cooler.
Have we met the quota of octopus takers?
All right.
All right.
Jump behind you here. Oh, you're okay. Doing me a favor. I'm not complaining. There we go. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna use up all my salmon because
I'll start doing some salmon.
that's what I did. You could blanch it for like a minute, or put it in your steamer for under 5 minutes, and then 2-3 hours in a slow oven, covered tightly. So it cooked in its own juices, and it came out. I'm really pleased with how tender it is. Ellen, are you going to try it? All right.
You said sushi grade salmon.
Yeah.
I've never heard that term. What is sushi?
So it's a higher fat, it's a fresher piece of meat, and to be honest, it's kind of a way for seafood sellers to sell things at a higher price. Sushi grade tuna, sushi grade salmon, sushi grade mackerel, all that stuff. It's just the nicest pieces from the fish. It's a nice fish, and it's the best piece out of it. You could use any piece of salmon for sushi or any of this, or same for tuna, but the stuff that's closest to the belly, that's the lightest in color, it's the least, it's the most tender, it's the fattiest. They call that sushi grade. It's basically the best part of a good fish, really. That's how I see it. And I'm not a fishmonger, but I let the guy at the fish market talk me into this because I was going to buy just ahi tuna because they had that. But that looks so nice sitting there. And he's like, for an extra couple bucks. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So, and it's really a nice piece of fish. I don't know if you tried it, it's melting in your mouth. But I need to have a piece myself. Does that make sense, though?
Yes, it makes sense. So, is there a problem with eating it raw? Evidently not. But
Well,
how do you weigh that?
you need to trust the person you're buying it from. You don't go buy it from the guy selling, fish out the back of his trunk in the parking lot, which I used to see in Milwaukee. I'm like, why are you buying shrimp from that guy? But you gotta trust your fishmonger, and you smell the fish, get your nose right up on it, and if it has any hint of anything other than the ocean, and if you press it and it doesn't bounce back, or if it's a whole fish and the eye is cloudy, it's too old for eating raw. And it's probably, you shouldn't buy it, because you're not gonna pay less for that piece of fish. You're gonna pay the same price they charged the first day they had it. So fish is just one of those things and when you're cleaning it, if you see any indications of parasites of any kind, don't use it. But these days, especially with farm salmon, the good stuff that you get at the co-op in particular, you can trust it. But it is a risk. I mean, it's like we're gonna make raw egg remoulade next, and there's a risk to that. But these are good eggs from a reputable source. Actually, these are from my chickens at home. So they eat. Their eggs taste like, yes, they are like family. We're down to one, so she's like family. But she eats organic food. She eats organic vegetables, trimmings from the kitchen. And the more she eats, the more yellow her yolks get. The cilantro stems turn her yolks the sunshine yellow, and I hope this pays off. Let's see. So I guess we can move on, huh? Any other questions about poke or fish or, yeah?
The first one, the octopus was the spice, I mean, it was more tangy. Is
Yeah.
that because of the amount of time in the city?
Yeah, that octopus, I rubbed it down with some lime and some chili, and then I grilled it real quick. And then it's had some more time to sit and marinate. So those jalapenos worked their way into everything, and it's that.
Yeah, I liked it more because it was
More spicy?
yeah.
Yeah, and this salmon, the salmon one will get more spicy, just sitting there, but it's not gonna, I don't think it'll be as much as the octopus. The octopus I rubbed down and I grilled, and I got that flavor in there, so. Yeah, and grilling the octopus at the end, it was cooked already before I grilled it, of course, but that putting it on the grill just adds another layer to it. It gives it a little crispy on the edge, because it's such a soft and tender thing. To give it a little char and give it a little extra flavor, I think goes a long way. And actually, that's going to carry into the next segment about the pork. Putting meat into a cold pan, or a wet piece of meat into a pan, or a wet piece of octopus on a grill, you're going to get more steam than you're going to get char. And you want to get, I know, if you ever watch Alton Brown, you've probably heard about the Maillard reaction, or the Maillard effect, where you get that brown caramelization. And that only happens when you have a nice dry piece of meat in a dry pan and you get a real nice sear. And that's what I got on that octopus. I keep putting it the salmon, but it's, so, does that make sense? All right. So, the next dish, continue with summer, and I put gloves on, now I got to take them off. Silly. I got some pork tenderloin at the store, and this is a dish. This is a piece of meat that they often have on the Thursday meat sale, which I take advantage of when it's worth it. I took this tenderloin, and they're about this big, so it's enough for 4, 5, 6 people, depending on how hungry you are and what you're serving them. I made a brine. I think you all have the recipe for the brine. And I made that yesterday, following the recipe that you all have. And this morning I took it out of the brine and I let it dry off, and I patted it off and got the grill good and hot. And I just dropped them on there, and I got a nice 360 sear all the way around, finished them in the oven. And they came out nice and medium to medium well. And when you brine, you know, when I met my wife, she didn't eat pork. I think it's because she grew up on the same dry pork chops that I did. You know, real thin and like that browning on the outside. What is that, the shake and bake? And it's like a little piece of cardboard. And it's, you know, but you get a nice thick piece of pork and you cook it like that and it's going to be dry. You put it in brine, the salt and the brown sugar in that brine gets down in the meat, starts to break down some of that connective tissue, which to achieve that, to break down those keratins, you need to get to 195 degrees, which is well done. And you don't want a well done pork chop because it's going to be dry. So this does it breaks down that meat using that salt and the brown sugar. But also in that brine, I think there were oranges and lemons, cloves, anise seed, garlic. Sometimes I'll throw half an onion in there. If I got leeks in my refrigerator and there's some leek greens on the top that aren't good for anything else, they go in the brine or they go in the stock. But brined overnight, grilled, finished in the oven, sliced real thin. And I would serve this on a nice platter, just laid out with a couple dollops of this remoulade that I'm going to make. So remoulade's just fancy mayonnaise. The difference between mayonnaise and remoulade, it's got capers, it's got mustard. This one's got tarragon and orange peel in it, and orange juice. I like citrus and tarragon. Those kinds of things are going to cut through the fattiness, if there's any in that meat, but it's going to complement the sweetness of the meat. And the remoulade is going to be just cool and refreshing. It's going to go nice with a beer. It's going to go nice with a glass of white wine. If you want red wine, you can have red wine, but I think this might be a white wine dish. So I'm going to start this remoulade with a couple of eggs. And I separate them with my hands because I think you could, oh, that's the wrong thing. There we go. The whites, you know, they stick to the yolk, and you could do the whole shell thing, but it doesn't work. So I'm going with 2 egg yolks because I like it kind of rich. Come on. Yeah, I had an old chef that if I didn't do it this way, he'd be all over me. And God forbid I use the mixer. So we're doing this by hand. Now, if you ever made hollandaise, you know that can be tricky. Mayonnaise is a little easier, but at the same time, you still have to be careful about it breaking on you. So this is about a tablespoon of mustard. I'm going to pop that in there. Now this will start the base. You want to whip this till those yolks start to get a little lighter, because they're real yellow, but when you give it some air, the volume will increase, they'll get lighter. It's already starting, see? So I'm going to give that a little bit. Now, if this was hollandaise, there wouldn't be any mustard, and we'd be over a water bath. And we'd be going real like a simmer. And you take it off the heat if it starts to cook, and you put it back on when it starts to get thin. But since we're not doing that, we'll just do this. So there's that. We're going to put in some orange zest. Oh boy. So much for that idea. I stole this from the bakery. They were like, where's that tomorrow? I don't know. There's my bucket. All right. That's my hand washing sink. So there's some zest. We'll do a little bit of orange And I got a half a lemon in here from last time I made this. Gotta get the seeds out. All right. So, and then picked up a little thing of tarragon at the co-op. Tarragon's nice. It's got that anise flavor, but just a little. And I'm not big on anise, but it's just the right amount, and it really complements the meat. And traditionally, pork would be served with a variation of hollandaise called béarnaise, which is hollandaise with tarragon. That's all it really is, but it's got a whole different name because that's how the French do things. I mean, you put in tomatoes into hollandaise, it's sauce cardinal. You put hot peppers in hollandaise, it's sauce diable. So, I'm going to chop this tarragon up, roughly, right in a bowl. Now here's the tricky part. You drizzle the oil in. And this goes for hollandaise as well. You start with a tiny little thin stream. And you can see it's starting to incorporate. If it sits there in the bottom and it separates, you're doing something wrong. But as you add the oil, it'll start to thicken. Now notice when I use the whip, I'm moving my wrist. If you do this thing, you're going to get tired. Small motions. I'm kind of going right where the whip's hitting, so it's not having a chance to separate out. It's getting whipped in right away. And the mustard, rather, is acting as an emulsifier. And this goes for when you're making vinaigrettes at home. A little mayonnaise, or a little mustard and a little bit of citrus or vinegar. And then you start drizzling oil into that, and you get your vinaigrette. And this is pretty good. I could keep going here, but I think you get the idea. And as you get it going, you can add it a little faster, obviously. Get back here. You could do this in a food processor. You could do it in a blender. The blender, you'll get a little stiffer result, but it's also a little easier. I mean, you can't really screw that up because it's doing the mixing. But as you see, it's gotten rather thick. And I could keep going. That's pretty good. Now you can put some toasted mustard seeds in there and some parsley and some pickle relish, and you got tartar sauce. You put whatever you want in there. I mean, this would be good without all that stuff, without the tarragon and the mustard. You could make this and put it on. You could really put it on something like fruit if you wanted to. I wouldn't, but you could. I know back there was a time when mayonnaise was a pretty common condiment for anything. But I did bring some more. There's another batch. That's a little stiffer. That came out nice. I'm happy with that one. So this is a dish that, let's start serving this up. Now the pork, you could make this, it'd probably go for a week or two. Yeah. You got nice fresh eggs. I have a friend who makes mayonnaise every week. She always has her own homemade, she bakes bread and makes mayonnaise. Which I mean, go for it. I'll buy my bread. Yeah, how shall we do? Oh, that's right. You could, well, it's not so much it's the olive oil that I don't like. I like olive oil. I use it a lot. And if I could put some at the end of this, just in the very end. But if you started from the very beginning with olive oil, at this point, that oil would have, I can't describe exactly why it happens. I think it has to do with oxidizing the molecules. It gets very bitter. If you put olive oil in a blender, you taste it before, blend it, and then taste it again, it's going to be intensely and unpleasantly bitter in the back of your throat. And it almost tastes rancid sometimes because it actually oxidizes the oil. Like I said, if I wanted to, I could add some olive oil at the end for that flavor, but this is going to be really nice and neutral. Safflower oil is neutral, grapeseed, sunflower is fairly neutral as well. It's also less expensive. And buying olive oil in America, you don't know how long it was on a ship. You don't know where it came from. You don't know what it's blended with. And I read somewhere that a statistic that a lot of the olive oil you buy is not even any good by the time it hits the shelf because it's been in a bottle or been on a ship or somewhere. Who knows? But domestic olive oil.
Speaking against olive oil.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it's just if you want good olive oil, you got to pay for it. And a little bottle for $20. I'll get grapeseed because it's you can get local sunflower oil from here. How's that going?
It's lovely.
Oh, good.
And we're gonna hit with some.
Remoulade. There's my spoon. I'll do remoulade.
Sauce.
Okay, so I'll just show you what we're just gonna
So, like, just
do,
to be clear, you're saying
just like that.
for
Yeah, like
this
a nice
kind of
dollop.
recipe where the olive oil is really gonna be,
Right.
it would actually take center stage over what you're trying.
It would. If you used olive oil in here, it would kind of overpower the rest of it. You wouldn't get the tarragon, you wouldn't get the orange, you would get wiped out by the bitterness. Is that all right? All right. I'll take a hand too. Here, I'll just take that from you.
Okay, careful.
Oh yeah, that's light. And there goes that.
It's okay, it's too many on there.
Ah. And if the pieces of meat are small, you can give them two. But there's plenty of slices in there. Well, everyone can have seconds too. Here we go. You got it? I don't want leftovers, so if anybody wants seconds when we're all through it, we'll go back around. Do you need a set of hands doing that, or are you good?
I think we're great.
Okay.
You wanna talk about?
So, one of the reasons I chose pork for this is pork is really accessible. It's really easy to work with. And I love highlighting the brining. I think that's a big thing now. Everyone, if you watch a show about pork, you're going to hear about brining the pork. But it's so effective, and it really changes the nature of the meat. And pork, I love telling this story. I bought a half a pig last year. And I broke it all down from the whole half. And there's something about that locally raised. I mean, that thing grew up just down the road. The guy who sold it to me sells us greens and herbs and vegetables at the co-op, and he just happened to have some pigs he was going to process. And pork, for good or ill, really built industrial America. I mean, the grain belt of the West fed the hog markets of Chicago and the slaughtering facilities, and that just went out to the East Coast, and the whole, that's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna ramble about pork. So all that pork and all that farming that happened in the grain belt fed the industrialization of Chicago and the West, and then out to the East, and the railroads were built for the grain and the pork, and the pig built industrialized America, and like I said, for good or ill. But the fact that we can go back to that now and have locally raised pasture pork that ate grass, saw the sunshine, and you know what? It's not cheap. You pay more for this, but you get what you pay for, and you know that the animal was raised by someone who cared about it and cared about you, the end user, not just your dollar. So I can't say enough about buying good pasture, locally raised, grass-fed, yada, yada. You've heard it all before. This is Madison, Monona. I can't say enough about that because it's a huge difference. I used to think, well, gosh, these ribs at the supermarket are $7 for this whole slab, but the stuff at the co-op is $15, but there's a huge difference. Not to mention how it makes you feel. I mean, when you see an industrialized farming facility, to call it farming is an abomination. It's not farming. So that's my rant about pork. Anyone have any questions about this dish? Oh, good. And this is how I'd serve it, too. I wouldn't serve it super hot. Can I get, what's up? Yeah. For one tenderloin, you could do that in like a loaf pan. I mean, anything. I did this in like a 5-gallon, but I had 7 of these guys. So, but anything it fits in is fine. Some with a snap top too, if you really want. If you're going to do it for more than a day or overnight, some with a lid. Otherwise, the whole fridge starts to taste kind of funny, or you pick up that flavor. Yeah. You know, I was going to bring a little side dish, but I ran out of time. For this kind of thing, you could do like a little frise salad, and you could even use this remoulade as a dressing. You could take a couple tablespoons, thin it out with some vinegar, toss it with some frise or some endive or some spinach. This time of year, you get a lot of baby vegetables. I picked up some bunches of baby turnips. They're beautiful little, and you just steam them or poach or blanch them briefly, and take the skins off with a towel. They just slide right off, and just toss in a little butter, a little oil. Keep it simple. You know, you don't need to do anything weird. And this time of year, you know, you don't want to fire up the oven or the stove. This is a grill thing. You can do it in a pan, like I think the recipe says. But yeah, simple. And I would serve this room temperature or cool. I wouldn't serve it really hot. You can. But if you're going to sit outside on the veranda, like I said, have a little wine, have a beer. I think this at this temperature, and then the leftovers for this make a great sandwich. You could throw it in your slow cooker with some barbecue sauce, and you got pulled pork. You could chop it up and what else? You could make croquettes if you want to go back to the 50s. You could you could do anything you want with it. That's nice to have around. Just make a cold sandwich, like leftover turkey or something.
Little yellow mustard.
Little yellow mustard. You can't go wrong. What is on my pants? Oh yeah. Oh wait. All right. You first, and then you. These were. They're all pretty standard. They're usually under 2 pounds. So it's about that big. No, it's more like you seen a beef tenderloin? About that long, kind of wide on one end and narrow at the other. Same thing, only this size. So it's kind of wide. There's one end is on a beef tenderloin, then the big end is called the Chateaubriand, and the other end is the tail. Same thing with the pork. You get the big end, you could cut that off and make your own little roast out of it. But yeah. And sir, in the back.
Yeah, the instructions, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Place the tenderloin in the brining vessel under the ice.
Oh yeah. So the ice is one of the ingredients in the brine. So if you just pour hot brine from the saucepan on the pork, it's going to start to cook. And you could you could chill the brine down, but if you put the ice there, so you're making a super concentrated brine, and it's going to chill out with the ice, and the ice is going to thin it out. Because if you just taste that brine, it's very intense. It's really salty, really sugary. You could make a thinner brine, but this just saves a step of chilling it down. So, and that goes for fish too. I've brined things like whitefish or trout before smoking. Same brine works for fish. This same brine works for turkey, chicken, pretty much anything. I wouldn't brine beef, but anything that would tend to dry out, you can brine. You have a question? No? Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
If you happen to be a grill person.
Yeah.
Can you cook this, how would you bake
I
it?
think there's some instructions in there, but if you get a good pan, like a good heavy bottom pan, like a cast iron, and get that good and hot, and dry off the outside of the meat so it doesn't steam, and drop it in there. Turn your hood fan on too, because you're going to get smoke. And then just kind of roll it until it's all brown on the outside. And then throw it in the oven for 10, 15 minutes, depending on how hot your oven is. And if you have a probe thermometer, 120, 125 degrees, take it out, let it rest. You'll be good to go. Yeah. And if you don't want to turn your oven on, you can brown it in that same pan and then put a lid on it, and that'll act like an oven. All right. Noah, do you have a question? What's your question? Well, the lid will trap the heat inside, just like your oven does. So you're going to put it in that pan, and it's going to, the heat inside that lid, and there's a little steam in there too, but if you brown it first, the steam won't affect it. It'll help cook it. Does that make sense? All right. Nola wanted to know what the lid does, if you put a lid on a pan and finish the meat with the lid on it. Mm-hmm. She's hired. We got a spot in the kitchen. Whoa, look at all that.
I am preparing some plates so people can pass them around and eat more pork. Anybody okay with that? Yeah.
All right, good.
Have to share.
Cool.
Community meal here now.
Indeed.
Did you say where the pork was from?
It is from, where's our pork from?
It was Wisconsin Meadows, I think.
Wisconsin Meadows, that's right. That's right.
And
That's from the co-op.
Sure is.
Yeah, it's in, I want to say it's near Dodgeville.
In fact, we did an event last weekend at Burgers and Brews, and the Wisconsin Meadows guys, the butchers.
The beef, yeah,
They were the beef guys.
Yeah.
They were hanging out with us, and they are fabulous guys.
yeah. And we've got several producers of pork.
Sell this at the co-op?
Yeah. These were on sale at the Co-op a couple weeks ago for the meat sale on Thursday. I always check the Facebook page on Wednesday. Today it's pounds of bacon. The pound of bacon's like $6.99 or $7.99 for the good stuff. That's pretty good. Usually goes for 11 or 12, I think. So, yeah, the meat sale's worth looking out for because, you know, you buy a lot and then it gets kind of long. Like, well, we better put it on sale. And I'm glad when they do. Sometimes it's ground beef. Sometimes it's, you know, chicken, which is also fine. But I look for these kinds of special things. Anybody else? Any grillers? Anybody like to grill or smoke? Smoker? Yeah, I got a big barrel smoker. I don't get enough use out of it, though. Yeah, just pass them down. Let's see, I'll even do this. Whoa, hey. Should I pass this around too? Yeah? Oh, yeah. Here you go. You just take some and pass it down. And I'll get the other side of the room too. That's the one I just made. It'll be a little different from the other one because at that time, that one had time to set. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I learned that running the grill at the Great Dane when I was 22. That was a long time ago. Let's see. You know, it occurs to me I didn't taste that. I didn't taste that and I didn't season it. I should have seasoned that. Will you stir that in for me? All right, because I mean, there you go. Thank you. All right, where were we? Is that all right? Anybody else want some remoulade on this side of the room? There you are. You're welcome. All right. Hey, we're making a mess. I love it. Yeah? Okay, I'm worried that I don't have to say, but. All right. Yeah. Yeah. You can have the salt. So the question is, can the brine have less salt in it? Can the brine have less salt? Yes, it can have less salt. You don't have to follow my recipe at all. I mean, play with it. Use different kinds of salt. Use regular sugar. Use molasses instead of brown sugar. You really can't go wrong with that. Yeah, it really helps. I mean, if you use a lot less salt, maybe give it a little more time to get in there. But for the most part, a light brine will work fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of us are addicted to different cooking shows.
Oh, yeah.
And also with this, the recent passing of Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Kind of wondering some of your thoughts on cooking shows you watch or
Yeah.
the cooking influence.
One of the first books I read when I started cooking was his first book, Kitchen Confidential, which didn't shock me because I was in the business. I loaned it to my mom, who loaned it to my grandma, which was a mistake. I got calls about that, the first chapter. But he was honest, he was real about it. That's what kitchens are like. When I was first starting and I was kind of naive, I was a little surprised that not every cook I met was some kind of a craftsman, some kind of an artist. They're just guys with jobs and women with jobs who are, toughing it out every day. And we all have a philosophy. Not everyone has a philosophy. Some people just go to work and cook. Bourdain, Pepin, Julia Child, Thomas Keller, those people, God, how can I say, James Beard, those people make me want to have a philosophy and they help me develop my philosophy. I think it's important if you're going to make food for people to think about why you do it and what you're doing. And Bourdain also raised up the dishwasher, the prep cook, the guy shucking oysters in the basement, because we all started somewhere. I've washed dishes, I've shucked oysters, I've peeled potatoes, still do sometimes. That's the stuff that needs to get done for this to get done. Without the dishwasher, it all grinds to a halt. You feed that guy, you make that guy happy. And you don't ask him where he's, if he's legal, because it doesn't matter. He's there and you're taking care of him, he's taking care of you. And that's just, yeah. Does that make sense? Thank you. Thank you. So, that's my Anthony Bourdain question, I guess.
So are you watching any on your day off?
Oh, okay. Don't miss New Scandinavian Cooking with Anders Viestad. That show, yes. So good. I watched him cook a whole meal in in geysers, and the guy's nuts. He does beautiful things, though. I really like. He once cooked shrimp on a train. Watch that show and watch Jacques Pepin. That Fast Food My Way show. That's how cooks cook at home. I mean, I'm not going to make ketchup from scratch. I'm not going to make mayonnaise every time I make a dish. He knows where to make it easy on yourself. And he's really good. I mean, there's nothing. My wife will tell you when I watch his show, I never say, oh, that's not how you do that. Everybody else, I'm like, why are you doing that? You don't do that. But Jacques Pepin, no. Who else? Julia Child, yeah. My mom watched her a lot, and she had the full set of books. And I learned on TV from her, and I learned at home from my mom and my great aunt. So. Oh, hi.
that you use for your salt in your brine?
Yeah, I use sea salt or kosher salt. Iodized salt, it would like a straight up taste test side by side. So kosher and sea salt they're saltier. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just people think that bottled water tastes like different because it doesn't. But salt tastes different when it's from the sea, and there's different. If you get it from different places, there's sel de mer from France that's it's gray, it's got mineral to it. It's got its own character. So yeah, I use kosher salt. Anybody else? Yeah, there's ingredients you can cut corners on, or buy the less expensive thing. I shouldn't say cut corners, but if you're buying canned tomatoes, they're canned tomatoes. I mean, I'm not saying you should buy necessarily the cheapo stuff that it doesn't even look like a tomato, but choose your battles. Buy the good butter, buy the good salt, buy the good oil, buy the good wine. Don't worry so much about the sugar and the flour, although locally milled flour is a thing now too. So,
Mike,
yeah.
I have to ask you this question.
Sure.
We do it of all our cooks.
Okay.
I have to know your cooking mishap, or one of
Which one? Well, Jamie will tell you I oversalt everything, which is probably true.
He's got a t-shirt that says, what does it say?
I have a t-shirt?
I'm making you a t-shirt.
Oh, great. My mom just got me a new shirt. It says, I know things and I cook. That's what I do. That's what it says, yeah. What kind of salt? Yeah, I do. So maybe I oversalt sometimes, but that's probably my first chef. He was very big on that. Mishaps, let's see. I get a little forgetful sometimes. I'll leave things in the fridge that I don't know are in there. That's a pretty common one. I don't really overcook things. I occasionally, I'll forget about a pan of onions and it'll burn. But I'm very careful, especially cooking meat. I'm very careful about that kind of thing. I wish I had a good story for you. I've screwed things up, for sure. I mean, that's how I learned that olive oil gets bitter. I made a whole batch of mayonnaise, like a gallon of it, and it was awful. And then I learned about the olive oil thing. You got anything that I've done?
You don't make a lot of mistakes. I know that there's not going to be any dinner with you after this, but.
Ellen? Yeah, help me out. What do I do? Should we tell them about the tuna salad? Probably not. That's the thing, yeah. Yeah. The first time I made it, she described it with an expletive. And I have not let her live that down. I said, should I make you some crappy tuna salad? She's like, and then even when it's good, she's like, oh, this is really crappy. I'm like, I know. It's not crappy, but yeah, I guess.
No, because you're such a good cook. That's why
Well,
I always ask, you know, if you had one incident, but
there's probably something. I mean, I've been to the hospital a couple times, you know, things like that, or plenty of after cooking, like at the bar stuff. But that was a long time. I'm too old for that now, too. So I don't know. I like I said, I try to be conscientious, especially when it comes to things like meat or good ingredients that you don't get more of. And hey, who's that? Is that me? No. I wish I had a good answer. I know you told me to think about that, but I couldn't. Yeah.
gave a great answer.
Should we talk about dessert and then go on to more questions? Okay. So dessert is painfully simple. It's summer, right? You don't want to bake. Maybe you could make ice cream, but really? So this is just nice summer melon, and it's a little early. So this actually was a little less ripe than I'd like, but so I put it in a hot syrup, simple syrup, equal parts sugar and water, and then I infused that with some tea bags and some mint leaves, and then let it sit overnight. I poured the warm syrup over the melon slices and just let it sit. And they steep in that liquid, and you let it go a couple days. It's only gonna get better. And I would serve this on a big platter with the cheese and little dollops along the side, or even just on a big bowl, with a big bowl of cheese on the table, everyone can get some. And again, this is gonna be good with a little glass of champagne, a little Vouvray, Sauv Blanc, something nice in summer, nice and cool. And there's all this liquid left over, see that? And that is, God, that smells good. You could use that liquid to make a cocktail, you could add that to some wine and make a little spritzer. You could cook it down and make a syrup and put it on ice cream. So I don't like to waste things either, that's kind of a thing. But this syrup here, I mean, it's this beautiful color from sitting with the tea and the melons. And it also helps to ripen the melon if it's a little too hard. It's actually better to have a little underripe melon for this because it'll soften a little. And it'll complement the flavor. If it's a kind of, these cantaloupes this time of year, there's a little green and it's a little bland. This brings all that right out. So I'm serving that with, this is, Hidden Valley, Hidden Springs. Hidden Springs creamy, that's right. Hidden Springs creamy sheep's milk cheese. We have 4 flavors at the Co-op. I brought along the plain, but I brought along some of the cinnamon cranberry, which actually looks like some of you got that. But we also have a lemon lavender or honey lavender, and there's an herb one as well. But I think it's like $4 or $5 for a little tub, and you can just put that on crackers, you put it on a piece of fish. It's really nice, and I think it's great with this melon. And actually, I mixed it with a little cream cheese just so it would be a little easier to spread.
Can you say again what kind of cheese?
Yeah, this is, I forgot already.
Hidden Springs,
Hidden Springs,
not Valley.
Hidden Springs sheep's milk. And it's the creamy, they make a lot of cheese, they make some aged cheese as well. But this is the creamy one. It's kind of like goat cheese, but not as farmy, as that.
Nothing like goat cheese, because I hate
Well, it's the consistency of goat cheese, but it doesn't have that grassy barnyard taste to it, which I like, but I digress. Yeah.
Mike, I have a question about the syrup.
Yeah.
Could you use black tea bags?
You could use whatever kind of tea you want.
Really?
Yeah, I happen to have Earl Grey.
You did Earl Grey?
I had Earl Grey laying around and I used it, and I really like the way that's black tea, so that's really kind of, but you could use green tea, you could use a fruit tea, depending on, and you don't have to use these melons either. You could use watermelon, you could use strawberries, you could use whatever fruit you wanted too in this syrup. So, but I chose melon because it's summery and it's easy for all of us to work with.
that
Yes,
Mike made us a test batch last week. We
all
ate
these
it-
things.
well, it was so good. We ate it the first day he made it, and we kind of went, did we have old tea? And then it sat overnight, and we tried it the next day. Absolutely.
In fact, I'm going to pour a little syrup. It's my wee cup. I'm going to put a little syrup on each of your plates, just so you have a little. It'll be quick. You taking it from the front?
How many people still have it for?
Question?
Okay, awesome.
Oh,
There's your mishap.
this Tony didn't see it. There's my mishap. Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Hey, ooh, hey, look who made a mess. All right.
Someone just wanted a little bit more clarity on the types of tea. They didn't hear.
Oh, any kind you want. This happens to be Earl Grey, but you could use green. You could use any kind of fruit tea, like a lemon zinger would probably be nice. because you get that lemony zing. Yeah, it's really pretty much up to you. And if you didn't want to use tea, you could use dried herbs, like mint leaves on their own, or hibiscus leaves.
Okay.
I was in the wine business until recently. I was a cook for a long time. I took a break and I was in the wine business, so I'm back to cooking. And there's a lot of parallel trends in food and wine. A couple years ago, wine was big on like lots of sweet, kind of cloying, if you ask me, wines. And food got that way too. But right now, I think, gosh, food trends, it depends where you go. Like in Madison, it's all about local and fresh. And all. We just got back from a trip to Asheville where we took a food tour, and the person hosting it said, we have this thing now where the farmers talk to the chefs and the chefs talk to the farmers. And I was like, you don't say. But I was nice. But you know, that's their thing now. And food trends, like global, national food trends, I don't put a lot of credit on, because by the time they get from the coast to us, it's old news. Trends, by their nature, are going to die out. Like, remember the 90s when everything was fusion? Everyone had fusion food. There's nobody making fusion food anymore. I was going to make a crack about the cucumber soup. If you wanted to be 90s, you could serve it in a little cucumber. But no one does that stuff. So trends, I kind of ignore trends. I like, just like the chefs that I like. They're old school, they're traditionalists. They use what they have, and that's how I choose menus. What's good right now? What's gotten my interest lately? For some reason, octopus was in my head. That's why I got that. Pork is always my favorite thing. It's just how you feel. I mean, what you cook reflects how you feel and who you are, and that's my trend. So, yeah.
If we go to the co-op tomorrow, what do we ask about this cheese? Where do we get it, and what's the name?
Just go to the cheese counter, and it's Hidden Springs. You say if you want some creamy sheep's milk cheese, that's what they will sell you. Yeah.
And it comes in a little tiny,
Little tub.
it's a little 4 ounce, 8 ounce, 6 ounce?
I think it's 5 or 6, yeah.
And it's got a really colorful sticker, yellow,
Purple, pink, or green.
And they're right on the bottom of the case.
There's a little happy sheep on there.
It's very happy.
Yeah.
Check.
Do you have your hand up, sir?
I did.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a sidebar,
Mm.
but recently I've done some research about farming in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that in the last year, 500 independent farms, small family farms, went bankrupt.
Wow.
So, do you have any ideas how we might help that from
Continuing?
continuing? I mean, that seems drastic.
Well, see, I would wonder what those farms, what their business was. Were they, I mean, small-scale organic farms or CSA farms, they're not going out of business. I think they're only growing. I think around here. I think I'm curious to know what they were farming. Like if they were part of a conglomerate that, dairy, mostly dairy. So it's like big corporate dairy. And it's them getting, when you get more and more producers in these big dairy conglomerates, the cost per hundredweight that the conglomerate will pay to the farmer goes down and down and down, supply and demand. And then like Costco sells milk that lasts for 2 months. I don't know how that works, but they do it. So the market's so different. And I think the way to solve that, much like the brewing industry has gone from, Coors and Miller, which of course are still giant business, but now how many breweries are in Madison? You don't have to drink beer that was made less than a mile from your house if you don't want to. I think that's the answer. I think the answer is every small town has a brewery, every town has a few farmers, every town has a pork producer, and it insulates us from those larger trends. That's why I love the co-op. I feel like I'm existing in a separate economy, and it's not 100%. I still buy gas. I still go to the Piggly Wiggly in Cottage Grove where I live. But I'm participating in this separate economy that's kind of sustaining, and it's a little more self-supporting. You buy from I can meet the person who grew this. You can go to the store and ask where the farm is and go visit the farm. If you have a CSA, I did that for a few years. We didn't this year because I don't know why we didn't this year, but community supporting agriculture, I'd recommend that in a heartbeat. A lot of insurance companies will pay a chunk of that. So if it's $300 for your farm share, your insurance might cover $100, $150 of that. And now you get a box of vegetables every other week that was grown organically, locally, didn't come from some truck that drove across the country. It's grown right there, and you have a relationship with the person who grows your food. And you know, you don't have a relationship with the person who sold you that lettuce from Dole that gave everybody salmonella. You know, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with Andy over at Sprouting Acres in Cambridge, because Andy doesn't do that. It doesn't work that way. I think that's the answer. I think the answer is local networks, state networks of farmers and people who, like chefs, all that stuff, and purveyors of food. I really think it's about getting away from mass-produced agriculture and single, like, you know, there's only one kind of tomato in the grocery store. There's more now, it's gotten better. But you've probably heard about bananas. Apparently there's a thing with bananas. They're all susceptible to some kind of a blight. And they only grow 2 kinds of bananas now, and they're both susceptible to it, and there's nothing to do about it. All the bananas are going to be gone or something. But it's not going to happen with heirloom tomatoes. So, all right. Yeah, I got a little long on that one. All right.
Mike,
Yeah.
I know Jamie answered this, but you put together this magnificent menu. What do you use when you're trying to plan a menu and your own cooking
Yeah.
influences or thinking forward to all the wonderful food that Willy Street has?
I'll just take a walk through the store, see what looks good. I've got a lot of cookbooks. I'll just flip through my cookbooks. That's kind of it. It's just, I've done this a long time, but at the same time, that's easy to just fall back on your standards. I try not to do that. I try to look for either new things or new versions of old standards. There's some things that are just winners every time, but it's mostly, I told Jamie, well, I'll get to you in just a second, sorry. I told Jamie, she said about recipes, get these recipes together. I mean, I don't like to teach recipes. I mean, you all got recipes for this, but it's less about recipe, it's all about technique. It's all about method. Cooking isn't, I mean, any of these recipes, if you make this remoulade tomorrow, it might taste different from mine because maybe your lemons were less lemony. Maybe your salt's less salt. Maybe you got different eggs. The recipes are guides. They're a structure to work on, but it's really about method and technique. And if you want a good book about that, Jacques Pepin wrote a book called My Technique, which I recommend very highly. And also Julia Child's work too. It's all about classic French technique. So, and you had a question.
Who cooks in your house?
Me. She cooks sometimes, but she knows that if she doesn't, I just will. And holidays too.
One more quick question. What are both of your personal favorites? I have Willy Street right now.
Oh,
Oh, well, hands down for me, it's the Mongolian seitan hot bar. You haven't had it? Is it vegan?
it's vegan, but it's glutinous.
Vegan and glutinous, great combination. It is so delicious. I could have never thought that a faux meat could be so delicious. I also love, Mike created a dish for St. Patrick's Day that we kept on the hot bar. It's our vegan shepherd's pie.
Oh yeah.
Also outstanding.
And I'm not a vegan and I'm not gluten-free, but
Neither am I.
again, it's technique and principles. I mean, I applied principles of making shepherd's pie to this vegan dish, and it came out good.
Stellar. What's your favorite?
At the co-op, I'm always down for the cheese department. The meat case is always good.
What do you like on our hot bar?
The hot bar, Mongolian seitan is really good. I mean,
Mongolian
I'm
seitan
telling you,
is everyone.
I don't know if you're familiar with seitan. It's an old thing that they've been making in the Far East for a long time. It's wheat gluten, and don't ask me how they do it. I don't know, but it's these nuggets of wheat gluten that look like pencil erasers. You'd never think it was good. And when I first started working there, they would go in this pan. It would kind of steam in there, but I refined the recipe in that I treated it like meat. I cranked the heat up really high, get the oil really hot, put that in there so it sizzles and sears in there, and you can smell it. You're like, it's burning. Let it burn for just a little bit, and then stir it around, and you get the crispy on the outside, just like a piece of meat. You get that richness from the caramelization, and that's a good dish. That's a solid dish. It's just that with brown rice syrup and soy sauce.
Makes this delicious gravy.
Yeah, green peppers, scallions. It's so simple and it's so good. There's so many flavors in there. I really recommend that one.
We have a lot of innovation going on at the kitchen. Oaks.
Yeah.
We have about 9 high-level cooks who have all kinds of ideas. So we are constantly
Oh, the risotto cakes too. Yeah, we do.
We don't have,
We have classes, but I'm actually working on, I'd like to teach a class. Thank you very much. I want to do one called Hot Bar at Home, where we make hot bar food at home. Because you can go buy it at the co-op, and I know how, it's good on the hot bar. It's better at the OSK when I taste it right out of the pan. You make it at home, you get how it is for me when I try it. So, thank you. And
after the holidays, look for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Rebuild our freezer first.
do we? Oh, our freezer, yeah. Yeah. Well, that reminds me, coming up, AMP, the annual member party for the co-op, that's July 12th. It's a Thursday evening. We have so we serve 5,000 meals, and we have a big business meeting for everybody who's an owner. What is it? It's us. We're doing pulled chicken barbecue sandwiches with coleslaw and chips. And then La Tamaleria is going to be there with vegetarian tamales.
Just committed to a cheese and spinach tamale.
Yeah. And then Bunkies will be there with their vegan offering, gluten-free offering.
Then we began.
Yeah, both. So if you're the first 1,000 people through the door, you get a gift bag full of goodies. Who knows what's in there? I don't know.
5,000 meals that
Yeah.
in under 2 hours. So
Yeah.
you should come and see it.
And every other year we've done brats, so this year we're doing something different. So come out and see how we do. And then we can maybe see if I have a kitchen failing. Any other fun events coming up? We just did Burgers and Brew. Did anybody go to Burgers and Brew? I got one. All right, well. You did too? What did you try? Did you go on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Do you remember what you ate? No? Oh, you had the brew, apparently. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, that's a fun event. Yeah, and I hope, last year there was 3 sliders. This year was 2 burgers. I'm hoping they go back to 3 sliders. Yeah, who wants to eat 2 whole burgers? But yeah, it's like $30 or $40. It's money for Reeb Food Group. And I recommend that. It's a lot of fun.
Where was that?
That was at the Middleton Capitol Brewery Beer Garden. Yeah.
It was so much fun.
It was. We got rained out, but it was a good time. But you make friends with other cooks, and it used to be a competition, and someone said, "Well, it's not a competition anymore." So there's 12 cooks there. It's competition. It's a competition. I'm not walking out of there without competing against somebody. So, any other questions or thoughts, or anyone like to cook anything in particular that I should hear about? No? All right. I'm glad you all liked it. Thank you. Oh, thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, gosh.